call this meeting to order. This is the regular school board meeting of the Northfield Public Schools, and today is Tuesday, November 13th. And Dr. Richardson, we had a few things in the table file.
Yes, ma'am. We have in our table file memorandum, we have the attached PowerPoint presentation for this evening's 2012 audit report. We also have the resolution canvassing the results of the school board election from November 6th. And we have several appointments, increase, decrease, change in assignment, and leave of absences that I would like to recommend that you add to the agenda for tonight.
Very good. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. All right. Public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the community to address the board. Is there anyone here who would wish to address the board? No? All right. We will move on to approval of the minutes. Board members, you should have had in your packets the minutes from the school board meeting held on October 22nd. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay. Moved by John, seconded by Jeff. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Announcements and recognition.
Okay, I have several items as far as announcements for this evening. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Northfield's Primetime program. It's a collaborative effort to assure out-of-school programming for Northfield youth in grades K through 12. It is going to be recognized at the 2012 City Showcase as a 2012 City Showcase exemplary program by the National League of Cities at the League's Congress of Cities and Exposition, which is being held in Boston, Massachusetts, from November 28th through December the 1st. The showcase is the opportunity for NLC, it's a premier program celebrating the city achievements in those cities. During the conference, representatives from the recognized programs will be engaging networking, knowledge sharing about the implementation strategies, successes, and lessons learned. Representatives from Northfield's Primetime Project will include Zach Pruitt, Director of the Northfield Healthy Community Initiative, and Pat Parlin, Director of the Northfield Public Schools Area Learning Center, and Coordinator of the Plus Out of School Time program here in Northfield. So again, a really great honor for them, and really, I think, demonstrates the quality of the opportunities that we're providing for out-of-school students. In terms of a second congratulations, we'd like to congratulate the Northfield Middle School student-run bookstore. And it's nice also, Amy, here tonight. Tattered Pages. They are now accepting donations for the upcoming 6th annual Holiday Shopping Extravaganza, which will kick off with an evening event on Thursday, December 13th, and will continue throughout the school day from the 13th through the 21st. All the books in the Tattered Pages are purchased, in quotations, by students using coupons rather than real currency, which students earn by donating books to the bookstore, by working in the bookstore, by doing jobs from the staff job jar, and by excelling in their classrooms. Items in the bookstore are inventoried, priced, and shelved by student workers and range in value from 1 coupon to 15 coupons apiece, depending on the condition and the popularity of the item. There are currently over 4,000 new and used books available in Tattered Pages. The 6th annual Holiday Shopping Extravaganza will be a wonderful opportunity for students to purchase gifts for everyone on their holiday list without spending a dime. As in the past, the evening will also include free gift wrapping, holiday treats, music, and movies. And anyone in our listening audience, basically, if you need more information about this, please do not hesitate to contact Amy Sieve at the Middle School Media Center, and she will be most gracious and happy to provide you with information. Also would like to congratulate Bridgewater Elementary School. I know that several of our board members were at the annual Veterans Day program that was held on Monday morning. We also had approximately 40 veterans in attendance at the program, representing, I think, almost all the services. I'm not sure if I saw anybody stand up for the Coast Guard, but basically a very good turnout. and a great program. Every grade level performed, and the Bridgewater Band also performed. It is really a long-standing tradition in Bridgewater and a really great event, I think, for our community, celebrating Veterans Day. Also, congratulations to the Early Childhood Family Education Program. They were awarded $19,000 from the Southern Minnesota Initiative Fund at Smith to support ECFE's newly expanded outreach work and programs to families with children birth to 5 years old. And again, this is the program that you've been hearing from Hannah and Sarah and others over the last several months in terms of a real expansion of that program, looking for new venues, the use of the Booker bus.
On the road.
And on the road this week, hooray, and really reaching out into the community to provide opportunities for both parents and students to get involved and develop their children's skills and abilities. Also, we'd like to congratulate the 34 students who participated in the 2012 Fall Chess Tournament hosted by South Central Service Cooperative and the Mankato Community Education Recreation. Students in grades K-12 from Belle Plaine, Chaska, Jordan, Mankato, New Prague, Northfield, Shakopee, St. Peter, and Waseca competed in the primary, elementary, and middle school and upper divisions. The fall tournament was a Swiss-style tournament. Okay. For anyone in the group, do we know what a Swiss-style tournament is? I'm guessing Matt knows, but just in case you don't, evidently it's a tournament in which students are not eliminated in the process. So there's a continuing competition, and it really is focused on helping to avoid discouraging young players from continuing to play, because they all get to be involved through all the rounds. In the primary division at third grade level, Peter Hillman, who attends Sibley Elementary School, tied for second place and also tied for third place in the overall elementary division. And then finally, last but not least, I would like to congratulate our board members elect who are either going to be returning board members or a new board member. And that includes Evan Iverson, Ann Maple, Noel Stratmo, and Rob Hardy. So again, congratulations to all of you. And I believe that is all of the announcements that I have.
All right. Board members, other announcements in recognition?
I'd like to tag on to Dr. Richardson's comments regarding the Veterans Program. Lois and I attended that, and it really was a wonderful tribute to the veterans. Music was fine. I think it was a nice opportunity to be able to put a little opportunity for patriotism education into the curriculum. And I think it was nice for the community to be able to come together. And I really admire Bridgewater for doing that.
Other? Julie?
I had a couple things. I wanted to thank the Mayor's Youth Task Force and HCI for publishing the student directories for the families. It is really such an important tool for helping our families stay connected. And there's a number of businesses that actually help defray the cost with advertisements put in the directories. So thanks to the businesses who supported that. And my second thing is the district band concert that was last week and was really, really wonderful. The theme, Under the Big Top, and Earl Weinman, who did a fabulous job as the ringmaster, and the students who performed very, very well. It was a great event.
Very good. Anyone else? All right. We are ready to move on to our first item for discussion. It is the school improvement plans, and I understand the middle school is going first. Is that correct?
No, actually, I believe the high school is.
Oh.
No. Okay, all right. We talked about flipping a coin, and evidently that flip has occurred. The official order is middle school and then high school.
All right. Board members, you have in your packet the continuous improvement plan.
And you're reminding us of weather to come, aren't you?
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, I'm not sure if are we leaving the lights up like that? Okay, everybody can see it all right? Okay. Well, good evening, Dr. Richardson and members of the school board. Thank you so much for allowing us to come here and share some good news with you today regarding our school improvement plan. We have members of our site improvement team here that will participate in the presentation, as well as some that are here just for encouragement here in the audience. So we have parent Adam Dowd to my right, Amy Garretts, who is also a parent, Amy Sieve, our Media Center Director. We also have Marilyn Neville, one of our English teachers and reading teachers here, and Karen Roback, one of our parents. So glad to have them participating, and that's kind of our goal, is to get as much participation from our staff and our parents and community members as possible. And yes, this one is setting the stage for what's about to happen there. And I do remember last year I had one slide that was just all garbled, and I couldn't figure out, it had never happened anywhere along in the previews. So we're hoping there's no garble in there anywhere. That's not intentional if there is. So we're reporting on the 2011-2012 school year and providing a look ahead to our plan for the 2012 and 2013 school year. And here is a list of our current members. We're kind of in transition. We have members that have joined us for this year and haven't been able to make it to a meeting yet, some that are new that have made a meeting, some that were working with us last year, and their students have moved through the middle school. So this is kind of the ones who are active this year on putting this together. Certainly a lot more people in previous years, and moving forward we'll have a hand in that as well. And of course the idea is to come here and present what we're doing about achievement and school climate. This is the middle school mission statement, and it's been there as long as I have. We still like it. But one of the goals for this year that our site improvement team will be working on is actually a goal that I have in the principal's pilot evaluation program, is to break down our mission statement into something that everybody can repeat and everybody can think about when they're making decisions. So we like our mission statement, but we want to have a slogan or a bite-sized mission statement that actually guides our instruction, and we would have 100% of the staff be able to raise their hand and say, I know exactly what it is. So we're going to work on that as we move forward with that same concept behind our mission. And a brighter day there as we look back on last year's results. For several years now, ever since we've had the late starts without the students there, we've also needed to have an achievement goal that enables our PLCs to have the flexibility to work with their area of specialty. They can't always do a reading goal or a writing goal, and so both secondary schools have had this goal in place to give the PLCs that flexibility. Reporting back from last year, the middle school had 14 PLCs that were considered the middle school as their home site. 13 of those PLCs set a goal that matched up with achievement goal number 1, which is a PLC design goal. 7 of them met or surpassed all their goals. The remaining 5 PLCs either partially met their goals or gathered valuable data to help them move forward or bring an end to their PLC and reformulate, whatever the case may be. And we really stress that just because you didn't make your goal doesn't mean that you didn't do what a PLC is supposed to do. You're better informed moving forward ahead, and sometimes it gives you the answer that you want, and you bring an end to that goal and start fresh with something new. So we really try to reinforce that. We had one PLC that aligned with the climate goal, and they met their goal, and then there's some highlights down there. In particular, math was very impressive in what the 6th grade accomplished as well, which we'll see a little bit more of in the future. Our second achievement goal from last year, if I could set the stage, we basically were waiting for the state of Minnesota to come back into session, to operate again, and tell us how we did on the MCA tests. So we actually had our site improvement team waiting to come back and review how we did on our previous goals to set goals. So we were scrambling about this time last year because of that delay. We also thought, we've been chasing this MCA whack-a-mole thing. Here's a subgroup that pops up. We work on that. Another one pops up. Let's just take this all comprehensive approach and look at every group that has ever popped up as not making AYP, regardless of how it happened or why it happened. And let's take whatever discretionary resources we have, whatever's left over after everything is covered, and let's focus on that with training, with interventions, with software and hardware and the things that we need to do, and let's see what happens. And there we have listed the groups that at any time at all in the last 5 years popped up on that failure to make AYP list. And as we look, we see the trend that's followed over the past few years from 6 demographic cells popping up all over the place. And once again, we're chasing that moving train, trying to hop on it. And as we've been chasing it, we've been getting closer and closer. And this year, we're very happy to report we had a little celebration at our faculty meeting today. Every single cell made AYP, just in time for the state, or for the Nickleby waiver and the state to switch to the MMR. So they actually went back to 2 years ago, even though the MMR, the multiple measures rating, hadn't been invented yet. They applied it to the 2010-2011 school year, and then they applied it again last year. And we went up 27 points on that as well. And we understand that because we made AYP, that was a good thing. We still have achievement gap issues that need to be worked on. I spent a lot of time with Dr. Jenny looking at what the MMR is and what it means, what the data means for our school. And it's really helped us so that when we get back together as a site team in January, we're all going to be looking at the goals for next year, which is going to be a reading goal building wide and also a reading goal focusing on our Hispanic subgroup, because that's dangerously close to not making AYP again. And there's all kinds of background for that, but we really think when we take the right approach to dealing with it, that we have a good chance of success no matter what the challenge is. And we're just feeling really good about being in that position. And a little hard to see on the screen, but if you have the handouts there, you'll be able to see that from the MDE website, you have no for all these years on math and reading. In 2012, yes. And we just like the sound of yes a lot better than no, so we're pretty happy about that. And we've always been, in the state, by the way, the state is all no's. When we look at Northfield Middle School compared, and last year we had a slide about anchoring, when we don't know exactly what all this means when it's different kids and different tests, we need to anchor in a comparison to what the rest of the state is doing. They all have to do the same changes in the same situations and the same stresses. So when we compare it to the rest of the state, we're 14.5% higher in our proficiency rating in math and 4.5% higher in reading. And we feel when we anchor in, that's a pretty good sign as well. And when we think about these cells, it's also kind of important to note the changing demographics of Northfield. At the middle school, for example, we are now over 25% free and reduced lunch, and we're about 12% what would be labeled by the federal government in the Hispanic subgroup, and about 12% that would be labeled as special ed students. So that has certainly changed over the years, so additional challenges to try to reach these. So as we look at our climate goals from last year, we had them broken down into several categories. Many of the members of the board have been here the whole time we've been working on this, teaching responsible behavior and improving the learning environment, with the whole theme that students can't learn if they're not in class. And that was an issue with kids being sent out of class for disciplinary issues. And so we set ahead with a systematic approach to it. And last year was the final group that had a recording year, and it was the 8th graders, and we sought to reduce their disciplinary referrals by 10% compared to the previous year, and they reduced them by 54%. And that was class of 2016, so they're up at the high school now, hopefully continuing on with that. And we also had another climate sub-goal because we basically had finished the 4 years of working through the systems, working with the 6th graders, and then the 6th graders moved to the next grade. And before you know it, everybody in the building understands what the expectation is, students and staff. And so we have now accomplished that, and with 2 years left on the plan, we wanted to set an ongoing level that's 50% below where we started when this goal began. And to follow through, at this point, last year it was 3 more years in the plan. And all the groups have received their training. And over 4 years, we've reduced the discipline referrals by 76%. And that's what it looks like graphically. And that graph, tells you a lot, just the slope of that. Over here, we're looking at, we're going ahead and we're trying to point. 800 is where we think we were at when I got there. All I know is kids were missing a lot of class time. So up here is just an estimate. These are the actual numbers moving down. In fact, last year the 6th grade set a record for the fewest by any class. I'll also report that this year's 6th grade is 70 students larger, and after 1 quarter they had 2 disciplinary referrals. So this is a systematic thing that's happening from elementary school, and we're following through on what they've learned in elementary school, and in the high school is seeing these kids better prepared as they arrive there as well. So that one, I guess, is a great one to look at. And then we look at the other part of the climate goal. We're moving on to paired participation from last year. Okay, so Adam was with our group last year, and so that's why he is going to present this next goal. and I'll click for you, and you can talk.
Thank you. My name's Adam Dowd. I'm the parent of an 8th grader at the middle school, and I wanted to talk about the parent-teacher conferences. And as you can see from here, we had the goal was to increase fall participation by 10%. We wanted to do this through inviting students to attend with their parents. There was a survey a couple of years ago, and the feedback we got was that parents liked the fall parent-teacher conferences better than the spring conference. They objected to having to wait in line, which is understandable, and I waited in those lines myself. We sought to reduce the wait time. We asked people to be patient, and we wanted to encourage the attendance of the child with the parents. And so this is our third consecutive year of counting students who had at least one adult attending the conference with them. And in October, the attendance increased an additional 11% from the previous year. That's 19. Oh, I'm sorry. That goes with that.
We added this year on to that.
Okay. And that shows our increase through fall of 2012. This was the third consecutive year of counting students who had at least one parent attending, and we did have an 11% increase from the previous year. Speaking personally for this past fall, it seemed to go very smoothly. We had shorter lines, and things moved along very smoothly. What I find very valuable from it is you know how your kid's doing. You get the reports. You see the grades. You know how they're doing. We want to hear how the kid is doing in class, how my son's behaving in class. What are the teacher's perceptions of any areas that we need to work on, or if there's any behavioral issues or anything like that. That's the real value of it, and I think we'll continue to try to stress that to parents as we move forward. Thank you.
And one of the key terms that Adam just stressed is the value. And if you know what the grades are, if you can go online and you can see all this information all along, why even come in for fall conferences? And that's the fresh look that we took at things was we need to add value besides just talking about grades or, how the first couple weeks went or whatever. And that's why you could see that increase all the way up to 78% of the students being represented. And it also makes sense to see who is being represented rather than how many people came in through the door, because sometimes there's 5 or 6 visits for one student and nobody for somebody else. To get up to 78% is a huge increase from where we started. And so we will continue to develop value-added alternative spring conference formats, including the pilot implementation of student-led conferences. So that was the other part of that goal for last year. And if we look at some data from last year with those spring events, those alternative conferences, because in their survey, parents said they still like to come in fall and meet the teachers and everything, but spring, if they already know the grades and there's no problems, we've got some other things to do. So once again, we wanted to add value. And we had a 7th and 8th grade preview nights where they look ahead. Parents can come in and see what the classes are for the next year. 33% of our 7th and 8th grade parents attended that last spring. A separate event was the 7th and 8th grade walk-in conferences for those who wanted to check in with the teachers. 36% attended that. So those are 2 subsets that you can't necessarily add together, but they're not identical people. 6th grade had a history day event, and they had a huge crowd, but we didn't take attendance. And then 6th grade, we piloted the student-led conferences, and we had 99% attendance, and that was the key. We actually had 3 parents out of, I think we ended up somewhere around 180 students, 280 6th graders, and we had 3 parents that didn't show up. 2 of them, it came down to Spanish speakers that we just couldn't get it lined up. No matter how hard we tried, we couldn't get them on the phone, and we couldn't locate that. Those 2 parents come in. And one other parent who just wouldn't come in. Despite our repeated tries. So we feel really happy that that's where we need to be, and we'll talk about where we go with that next in just a little bit. And now Amy is going to talk about our plan for this year.
Good evening. I'm Amy Gerwitz, and I am the parent of a 7th grade girl. And I just want to say I'm proud to be one of the 99% who came in last year. And I'm also proud to have come in this year for 7th grade conferences in the fall. And I think there's a real value added for having the student come as well, not only from the perspective that the student gets to hear what's being said about them and feels like they're part of the team, but also from the parents' perspective of we get sort of brought into the school and shown our child's world and, get some sense of their perspective on what their school is like. So that's a great combination to keep the students involved. And before I go to my part, I just wanted to thank you all for lending us Ann Maple. I am part of the Human Rights Commission for Northfield, and Ann is our liaison with you, and she is a great contributor to our group as well. So I just want to let you all know that and tell you that we really appreciate what she does with us for that group. So thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
So I am one of the new parents this year. I've just gone to one meeting so far, so I wanted to look forward as to where we're going to go with the site improvement team. And so I wanted to talk about our first goal for this year. It's the same goal as last year. We'll demonstrate increased proficiency for each student in the essential learning of content areas as measured by either passing rates or common assessments. And that's allows each teacher to come up with their own set of goals, because the physical education teachers and the music teachers are going to have different goals for what they want to do than the math teachers and the reading teachers. So that gives the teachers a lot of flexibility and ownership as well as what their goals are going to be. And then this is just a fun picture for you all to see the process in action. This is teacher Sarah Mickelson with one of her classroom groups. She's a reading teacher. And she takes the responsive classroom approach, which also brings the students in to as part of the process, so they feel like they're engaged in meeting the goals as well. And that's all from me.
Hi, I'm Amy Sieve, Middle School Media Specialist. I'm going to be sharing with you our second goal. And I just want to say that in terms of the student-led conferences last year, it was my first opportunity to participate in the student-led conferences. I had about 8 students who I joined in the conference with, and I was nervous at first, and I can't tell you how successful it was. I mean, that the parents were all proud of the work that their students showed them. The students left feeling good about themselves, which was really a key component for us, that they come to that conference with a portfolio of their success, and the parents left feeling proud of their students, which was really an important piece. So it was an amazing experience. So the second goal, we will provide increased opportunities for students to apply oral communication skills to include expanding student-led conferences to both 6th and 7th grade by this spring, March 4th, 2013. The pilot program, or the pilot conference schedule last year was for 6th grade only, so this will increase it to 7th grade as well. And our action plan includes training sessions for faculty on professional days. We'll be using our Family Access online system for scheduling conferences to reach as many families as we can. We'll explore 6th grade base class and other advisory options for scheduling. And then we'll host the student-led conferences for both 7th and 8th grade students, again, in late February and March 4th. And our plan, I think, is to have at least 99% success rate. It was really fun, so I'm happy to share that with you. Thank you.
I hosted 34 of those conferences last year to make sure that we could fit them all in. And what it most reminded me of was the future challenges that students will have as far as applying to get into programs, applying for jobs and things like that. It's a skill that just isn't sitting there in the curriculum, and we have found that spot to do that. And a lot of tears were shed in some of these conferences, and they were tears not because their parents were disappointed, but because they had never had, or they hadn't had that conversation or had their student present work like that to them for years as they grow into those adolescent phase, and it was really heartwarming. So we hope to get the same results with the 7th grade. Now we're going to move on to our climate goals for next year, and we still have 2 years to go on the 6-year plan. And once again, when you think of the behavior support that's part of the RTI movement that we're going through, you really want to have systematic interventions, and you want them to collect data over time, which is why we started this a long time ago and looked 6 years down the road as to what it might take to make this happen. We feel very good about maintaining for the next 2 years. In fact, today I did a training for faculty on make sure you're making those referrals when you need to, because this isn't about pushing down the referrals, it's about getting rid of the referrals that waste time and focusing on the ones that are quality referrals. So we went back over when that's appropriate and how the teacher follows up so that the accountability is there. So this is, we feel really good about where we're at with that. And we also talked about incorporating skills along with it that actually teach the pro-social skills. And that's always been there, but we're going to make a greater effort. And things like responsive classroom in 6th grade hit right on the money with that. So teachers have a lot of flexibility within this plan to use the styles that they like and that they think work and to adapt for the different grade levels. So moving on with that one. Another one that we would like to do is we want to promote school resource efficiency and literacy by applying for National Green Ribbon Schools recognition. That application is due in December. And basically, I think 2 secondary schools that are not Title I schools can be nominated by the commissioner. So the window of opportunity is very small, but when we looked at the application, we realized that we were doing most of these things already through a lot of energy efficiency things and a lot of recycling, composting. So we were already going there. What this does is the process of going through the application makes us a better school, whether we get lucky enough or not. And it also acknowledges all the work that we've been doing, and it sustains that effort that's been there already. Any initiative, if it's not fed, will die out. And so that's what this process is going to do for us. And making it a goal gives it that emphasis that we like to have behind there. And then the other climate goal is basically to continue on with the parent communication, the lunchtime experience, and the classroom sound distribution system goals that our site improvement team set 4 years ago. And we know that, once again, we have to continue to sustain those for them to continue to be effective, and the site improvement team does that. Our final slide that we're going to show you about goals is just to kind of share our action plan with the slide I just talked to you before. And this is kind of interesting because with our enrollment going up, we know that our lunch modules are just too big. We're going to be up 50 to 100 students over the next few years, and we can no longer fit everybody into 3 lunch periods. So the students are well behaved at lunch, but the sound bounces around a lot. So we're going to look at other options that reduce the number of students, and it will impact instruction, it will impact the school day, but we're at the point where we have to do that. And our building cabinet will make a recommendation. It's the other kind of decision-making participation avenue that our faculty has, and actually our whole staff participates in. So they'll be working on that. At the same time, last year in the capital outlay process, we thought that we could get some sound absorption panels. So we reduced the number of kids, also try to absorb some of that sound bouncing around. And we believe that we'd be able to get access health and safety dollars for that. Turns out we can't, but let me show you the story here really quickly. I've been taking measurements. One of our site improvement team goals was to collect data on what is the actual sound in the cafeteria. And it's a range between 82 to 94 decibels. I use a sound meter, and I can tell you the 94 spike was Friday of homecoming. And any other days that were that high, I can trace back to full moon or something like that. But normally it's in the high 80s, but it definitely does get up into the 90s. And if you think of a conversation, which the kids are talking at conversational level, 60 to 65, it just gets bounced around and collectively amplified till it gets up that high. It's higher than city traffic. At times it's higher than a train whistle, and you might hear the train that goes through town, I don't know, is it 2 a.m. or something? That's loud. Hearing loss after prolonged exposure can begin at 90 to 95 decibels. And here's the catch on this is OSHA says that if you're exposed to 2 hours of this continuous level, you need to have hearing protection. 30 minutes at 110 decibels. Well, at 94, even though it's a log scale, we're still getting awful close to that. And we can't wear hearing protection in the cafeteria because then you can't talk to the kids. So it isn't really a great environment for the students, even though they're in there for a short time. It's not a great environment for people like me who spend a couple hours a day in there for 16 years in a row. So we do have this back, no longer accessing, because of this threshold, we're not accessing health and safety dollars, but we have it back in the queue. And we really want to move forward on both of these things because we're just sharing that these are our kids and our staff, and we really believe that we need to do something to correct that. So, and that's the mission that our site improvement team has, to make things like this happen. And then finally, we do measure our kids in all kinds of ways with testing and attendance and everything. But the thing that matters most is if you have an 8th grade student who can carry the principal around, it's time for them to go to high school. That's the measurement that we have. So we close that one up. And thank you very much for the time. Any of our group is happy to entertain questions, especially you can talk to me just about any time, but you have some other people that you may want to get some insight from. We'd be happy to answer any questions before we turn things over to the high school.
Board members, questions, comments? Julie?
Well, this is really a wonderful report, and you actually addressed all the questions that I had, but I congratulate you on staying the course for a number of those initiatives because they're really, really important, and really an overall concern for the social and emotional welfare of our students. I think it's really awesome, and was so thrilled to see the student-led conference, the increase in participation, because I know you've really tried to focus on that, so it was good to see that come through. So congratulations, it's really good stuff.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Other comments or questions?
I just wanted to, thank the parents that are participating. I think the parent voice is so critical and meaningful to these site improvement plans. And I guess I'd like to echo what Julie said. Just seeing the disciplinary referral and meeting AYP and knowing that goes hand in hand and seeing that success story, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. I think you should be really pleased with all your efforts and getting to see the fruit of them. So, nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Richardson, Madam Chair, and members of the school board, I echo Jeff's thanks for letting us come and share some good news with you from the high school. I guess I would have two quick comments, actually one comment and a question regarding the middle school piece. First of all, my thanks is personal as well. As a parent of a middle schooler, I know there are great things going on over there. Then the question would be, where would the Bruce Springsteen concert that Mr. Peshta attended this weekend land on that decibel chart? So maybe if we could field that a little bit later, that would be...
Jet engine.
3 hours of jet engine. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to share some information with you. Our site improvement plan, and I mentioned to Chris, Dr. Richardson, this a couple of weeks ago, that one of the evolving processes in the site council, this teacher leadership team that makes staff development and site improvement decisions, the evolution of that process has been really to allow the teachers kind of full reign of the school improvement process, to really to be there to help facilitate, but also to let them really grapple with those notions of what it is we need to do as a school and an institution to move forward. One of the pieces of that is to allow them to make some choices about what aspect of the site improvement plan they participate in, and most of them steer directly toward the production of it and steer away from the presentation of it. And the list was narrowed down to two. Amanda Tracy, our site council chair, was planning to be here tonight, but actually a death in the family took her away out of state, actually. So thoughts are with her, but I'm flying solo, so for what that's worth. But we at the high school also, no surprise, have two focus points, two foci, to improve school climate and to improve student achievement. And as the middle school presentation so aptly identified, we have actually worked together over the course of the last few years to really make a consistent approach to particularly the academic goal and the notion of improving passing rates with the academic interventions that we do. And so you will see some similarities there. We've tried to personalize them as much as we possibly can, specific to obviously our students, but also to the needs that those students have in the array of classes that we offer. And so regarding the climate goal, and I've reversed these a little bit, but the climate goal, as you may remember last year, we had the focus on 3 themes, and it was it's really been kind of, again, an evolution of the climate goal, moving from how we act as a school community to last year's was really kind of about the approach that teachers have in terms of being models and modeling for students. And 2 years ago. Last year, then, our emphasis was the question to students of how empowered they feel, how safe they feel, and whether or not they have a place here at the high school. The assumption being, based on the research, that those 3 pieces, that connection to school is also going to have a direct correlation with student achievement and academic success for students. So you will see that of those 3 emphases in our student survey from the fall and spring of last year, students felt empowered, in fact more empowered than we had hoped. Now that sounds kind of funny. What I mean is that we were shooting for a goal of 70% of students feeling like they felt empowered in our institution, and 72.3% responded that they indeed did. The third one, I'm just going to leap over the one in the middle to the other success, was that students felt that they had a place. And I'm going to speak a little bit more as we move into the goal for next year and some other details, really to get at what that means, what we hope it means for students. But we had initially thought that 83% was a good place to start based on an initial survey that we had done the prior year. And we were very pleased to know that at the end of last year, 93.8% of the students felt that they had a place. And I think if I could just jump to the next purple bullet, the powerful moment, I think these 2 things tie together because we do an activity at the high school with the staff every year that we call the Student Connections Checklist. It's essentially it's an electronic survey where teachers click on the students with whom they have connections. And it's a 3-step process. The first process is teachers looking at the entire student body. The second process, then, we break that down into students who have 2, 1, and 0 connections according to staff, and then put that out mid-year. So we share those names with staff at that point. So not only are they indicating whether they've made a connection in the interim, but they're also seeing the list of students that perhaps are in their classes or on their teams, knowing that there's an opportunity there to make some connections with students that aren't being connected with as comprehensively as we would like. Then the third point in the fall is when we share that list back with teachers. And of 1,184 students that finished the year, 7 were on the list of 2, 1, or 0 connections with staff, and none of those had 0. So this was really the first year. We had done the activity before. It was a little unwieldy because we were doing it on paper. And now with the advent, not now with the advent, but recently with the advent of electronic means of calculating that data, we were really actually able to streamline that process and get at those specific students. There were some funny moments too as we looked at names, and we were troubled about seeing names of kids that weren't being connected with, and then we found out that they actually weren't here. So that was a small benefit to know that we were doing the work with the students that were indeed in the building. The goal that really has the point of the climate progress report that really kind of piggybacks into what we're doing this year in terms of the climate goal is the aspect of feeling safe. And our goal was 88% based on that preliminary data from the year before, and we hit 83, and so 17% in our estimation is not a horrible number. when you figure that 83% of students feel safe in our building, but it's still 183 students. And so with that, our initiatives as site council moving forward was, well, how do we address and further dig down to say, well, what does that safety mean? Is it about certain places in the building or times of day or days of the week? And I know that sounds a little peculiar, but a lot of what we've read and what we're beginning to see, particularly in things like PBIS and other behavioral initiatives, is that really addressing those issues is about digging down to that level of data and finding out those very, very specific aspects of safety and behavior within the confines of a building. So our continuing concerns, that 17%, obviously 183 students, until that number is 0, we're not going to be satisfied. And then specific to the survey question, what we really wanted to project forward was, well, how do we get at responding to those issues of where kids feel safe and where they don't feel safe? So the fall survey, actually, that students just completed on Friday in the Media Center on using an electronic survey, asked them to identify very specific places in the building, from wings of the building to times of day, to situations before school, after school, lunchroom or lunchtime, and those types of situations where we could then kind of further address those issues rather than saying, well, you don't feel safe. Well, what does that really mean? And so we wanted to make that data as useful as possible. So those survey results will then obviously inform our plan moving forward. And then also, and that kind of speaks to the last two bullets there, to address the when and the where of student safety. And then use that data to say, okay, and what specifically are we going to do? And as an example would be perhaps it's the hallway of the M wing, or it's the cafeteria before school, to look at initiatives, and I know this seems really elementary, but to put more adults in those spots, to have more of a patrol atmosphere. And that's just one example of the types of things we'll be able to do in responding to that specific data. In terms of the student achievement goal from last year, and I took out pieces of it. It's the same goal that the middle school talked about in terms of raising passing rates. And really what we did to address those, and what I would say the 4 specific tangible, they're happening across the curriculum, but the 4 that kind of leap out in terms of building-wide initiatives are obviously the PLCs and the individual goals that teachers are tackling in their PLCs, but also a continuation of the 9th grade academy, a further flushing out of what we call Seminar 10, which is a 10th grade, is essentially the graduate level of our 9th grade academy, that allows students to be, they're not in academy groups like they were in 9th grade, but they do all come together 1 hour a day in the seminar, where they're working with one of the 3 teachers from science, social studies, or English, and then there is educational assistant support built into those seminars. So it looks like the 9th grade seminar does. It's just not connected as directly to those 3 academic areas. And then the structured study center is probably really the newest piece, and that is essentially a study hall where the teacher has kind of this ramped up amount of knowledge about the students in his or her study hall. So on a daily basis, weekly basis, teachers are checking grades, checking progress, communicating with the teachers of those students to find out what late work, incomplete work, what areas those students are struggling with. It's a much smaller number. We try to keep those numbers down below 10. And those students are identified by the failure list from the previous quarter or midterm. So we move students into those structured study centers. We have one each hour, and then there are 2 hours because of the need. We have 2 structured study centers happening at the same time. So the goal being there that rather than looking at the DF list and saying, wish there was something we could do about that 4 weeks ago, we're doing something about that because they're moving in at midterm, they're moving in at quarter, they're moving in at the secondary midterm, and then of course they can move in also at semester time. So we're trying to address those issues before that snowball begins rolling too far down the hill. So any student with a failing grade at the point we are looking at that list is moved into the structured study center. So in terms of the goal from last year, we were looking at a 2-year average, excuse me, from 2009 to 2011, where 15% of all students were failing a course or more. So that F list, as you look back over the course of an academic year, gives you a percentage of students who have failed a class. In 2011-12, we'd reduced that number to 12%. And if you may remember a couple years ago, the inspiration, 4 years ago, time flies quickly, the inspiration for the academy was based on the failure rate among ninth grade classes of a 24% clip, actually a 24.5% clip over 4 years running. So the fact that building-wide we've gotten that number reduced to 12% and really are pushing toward a single-digit number is certainly a reason to celebrate. I also very purposely add the number of students that is, because sometimes that percentage gets lost in terms of, well, what does that really mean? And so this is essentially the diff list is a page gone. It's 29 students who are no longer on that list for a failing grade. So we feel that's something to celebrate. So implications about the academic goal is that we do want to shoot for that single percentage. It's interesting as I kind of survey schools in the conference and around the region, the number of schools that are working to get to a point where we started, is at once a pretty cool statistic. At the same time, we also know that sometimes that fine-tuning takes a little more work, a little more precision in terms of getting that from 12 to 11 to 10, but that's really going to be our focus of a single-digit percentage rate. And that falls back in a number of ways, and most specifically to those PLCs that are working with the students, the teachers that are working with the students on a daily basis. To broaden the system of interventions, and without being overly complex with this explanation, but 2013-14, we are looking to implement essentially what comes next in the process that has occurred at the elementaries with RTI. So right now our systematic interventions team, in assistance with Mary Hansen, are really beginning that dialogue in earnest to say what are those interventions going to look like. Really what we have put in place with the seminar and the Structured Study Center and so on is our best guess at this point. But we're looking forward to that research-based piece that we'll be able to move forward as a building and determine what it is that's going to best get at those percentages like the failure rate and so on. So as we look ahead to 2012-13, our first goal, and we've tweaked this one a little bit, we've used the goal that Dr. Richardson and Mr. Pesch and I wrote for 3 years. And our site council wanted it to look more smart. Because we had gathered enough data to the point where we kind of knew where we were progressing in terms of the failure rate. So we added those pieces that the goal had really kind of been missing, at least for our building, that were intangibles because we're not working with the types of specific reading and that type of data that they are at the middle school and elementaries. So looking at where we are at now from the 88%, we wanted to move that passing rate to 90% across the board. So we feel that's a doable based on what we've been seeing over the course of the last 4 years in terms of that improvement. We feel that that's a realistic goal on our way to really 100%, which is what we think is a realistic goal. It's going to take some work, but we do think that that's possible. And really the need is based on, again, that 12%. 12 is a really small number. 149 looks a little bit more obnoxious. So we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that is 149 of our kids who are not succeeding in a class. And then our school climate goal, looking specifically at the questions, and this is where I talked a little bit about our new survey, speaking specifically to areas of the building where they feel safe in, times of day and situations. We've also incorporated a series of questions that separate out emotional and physical safety, because really they are two different things. And so trying to dig down as much as we possibly can to really identify what it means to be safe. Because, Jeff, you may feel safe for a completely different reason than I do, and unsafe for a completely different reason than I do. So we want to make sure we've identified that. So we look at that number from our previous spring survey of 83%, and we want to turn that up a notch. And again, working toward the 90s and then further on into 100%, but we feel based on the data that we're gathering that that's a realistic goal. And we're surveying the students twice a year, so we'll be able to actually see the comparison of 83 in the spring to our fall numbers. So it really will be the cohort model that we're looking at from fall to spring of this 9-12 group. And how do we get there? And I've kind of grouped both goals into the same slide. Again, PLCs, 9th grade academy, structured study seminar and structured study centers and seminar 10 are in place. And I'm very excited about the dialogue that's occurring across the school building. We are, I would say, dipping our toe in PBIS, in standards-based grading, numerous systems that are in place to get at the issue of student achievement. And I think it's a real wise move on the district's part to kind of project that goal of implementation of a system out there so that both the middle school and high school staff have a chance to kind of examine what's out there. Tomorrow at our systematic interventions meeting, the people on that team are going to gather and do kind of a sharing of different articles that they've read to share, some of that theory and some of that research data that's out there regarding numerous pieces of school improvement. One of the things that I think we're going to be asked to do ultimately is to identify for ourselves what that fine-tuning looks like. A lot of times, and Mary and I have talked about this with PBIS. PBIS is implemented by a lot of schools in crisis. We don't feel that we're in crisis, but we certainly feel like we can make improvements. So it's taking some of those programs that maybe are a little bit square peggish, and we're a little bit of a round hole, and figuring out how the two work together so to really get those 1s and 2s and 3% so that we continue to grow at that rate rather than being satisfied with saying, well, we're not a school in crisis, so what's the problem? That we are taking an initiative to look at those small pieces. I have the question mark there very purposefully because this is really an identification of a design that's in progress, where staff at both buildings are going to have an opportunity to participate in the conversation, in the exploration, and ultimately kind of the development of the plan. So from that standpoint, it's really exciting that staff are going to be able to see what's going on in their classrooms and bring that back to the dialogue and really take ownership of what it is that we do as secondary institutions to bring about that improved academic climate. And then the climate goal, again, some of those things are going to look very familiar to you. One of the things that we did in October was essentially Anti-Bullying Month or Bullying Awareness Month, depending on who you ask. There's a different name for it. One of the initiatives the site council came up with was Chris Holmquist in our art department designed this logo, and we outfitted the whole staff in bright orange T-shirts that had the logo on it. Pretty positive impact with students and I think staff alike. In fact, Deborah Winkleman, our German teacher, actually mentioned that the group of German students who were here over the last few weeks had commented about how cool that was and that would never happen in their school. The teachers would kind of align in that way and wear that shirt, and could have been just the bright orange color. But we were pretty pleased with that, and I would say in retrospect we wore them every Wednesday in October, and now we'll wear them once a month for the rest of the year. Every Wednesday in October, that was a lot of orange for the staff. I think they're probably looking forward to the once a month now, but I think it's going to be a good continual reminder that focus of student safety is in front of that. And we've really designed a lot of staff development initiatives, as well as student interaction and information dissemination around the notion of respecting one another, safe climate, safe environment, from the standpoint of activities we did preschool to what we'll be doing next week with our staff after the appreciation breakfast. And then also with students, the bullying videos refers to a series of videos we showed on Wednesdays during the month of October that some of were self-produced, some of them were professionally produced that got at those issues of respect and kindness and the anti-bullying campaign. Student checklist activity, again, will be something that we do again. I expect, equally powerful feedback from that. And then the bullying awareness training is what I talked about with our staff development. So with that, I'll show you the list of individuals that serve on our site council team who really did except for this moment in time, did the heavy lifting in terms of identifying the site improvement goal and really taking the lead on staff development activities leading up to the year and then throughout the year. With that, I will open it up for any questions you may have.
Board members, questions?
I have one.
Ann?
And maybe I missed this because you gave us a lot of information, but for the students in the academy, and that you talk about them having be failing in one class. Are there very many who are failing in multiple classes? And have you had progress on getting it down to just one class?
Sure. That's a great question, and we do have. If I said I were our site council were maybe at a 100 level class for data gathering. The folks in the academy, and part of that is, of course, the increased numbers of people working with those students, but are really that on steroids. And so they're looking at that on a quarterly basis, a semester basis. There are measuring times when the number of total students in the academy is down around 4% of students that are failing a class, and that would be a semester measurement. Excuse me, a quarter measurement. I apologize. A quarter measurement. In terms of how many are failing multiples, it's a very small number. I would have to look to see what that specific number is, but they would certainly have that data, yes.
Thanks.
Other questions? Julie?
I had a couple questions. I believe, isn't this the second year of the Structured Study Center?
It is, yes.
Okay. Did you make any changes to this year versus last year in terms of what you learned and how maybe you did some things differently this year?
You know, one of the things that we did, it's probably the most significant, was we gathered that group of staff together. And when we did the pilot the first year, it was really about putting this in play, putting the kids there, and then making connections with the staff to say, here's what you can do, here's what you can do. This year, we gathered them all together and actually gathered all the Structured Study Center teachers as well as the study hall teachers, because the notion that midterm catches kids more quickly and moving them into Structured Study Center, we also wanted to kind of backfill the gap for regular study halls. So we have teachers doing similar grade checks, progress reports for students in study hall, where once a week they're asked to look at the grades of the students and see how they're performing. And so looking for any potential warning signs that might be a single assignment blip as opposed to, 2 or 3 or 4 or a trend over the course of a number of weeks. So I would say the study center was a significant change in terms of giving those teachers the access to that information so that they were working, albeit less frequently, because the assumption being that those students need less frequent check-ins, but those check-ins are occurring on a regular basis. In terms of the Structured Study Center teachers, we actually gathered here in the Media Center in fall workshops and really went through a series of suggestions from those teachers who were veteran Structured Study Center folks. We have 3 first-time Structured Study Center supervisors. That's a lot of S's. That really to get them all on the same page in terms of kind of what types of information they were sending out to full staff, and what our expectations, really, and with the Structured Study Center folks, it's almost what they expect of one another. And I think it's created a neat dialogue among staff members in that they have further understanding of how each of them works. And we have staff who are working together in PLCs and developing common assessments and really working from a common curricular core. But there's still autonomy there in terms of different methodologies and practices, from grading practices to grading scales to things of that, to late work questions and so on. So it's been a really interesting thing to watch as teachers have communicated more about those types of semantics in their classroom, that I could see, and I don't have any hard data for this, but I could see how the conversation about making things more consistent across the board for the benefit of students might be sprung out of what's happening there, just kind of accidentally, because the Structured Study Center folks are functioning consistently. They're communicating out and finding out what all those different teachers are doing. And we surveyed them at the end of the first quarter just to see how things were going in terms of how the communication was. We were actually very pleased with questions like, how quickly are teachers in general getting back to you, and a lot of data that suggested that same day, and asking questions about, are there particular trends with students finding what areas are particularly difficult in general, again. So kind of establishing some trends so that we can better serve those kids there as well as in study halls and across the curriculum. If I find out that my class is particularly hard for a large number of students, then I kind of want to look inward and see how I could possibly address that, whether it be in my PLC or just individually.
Well, I think it's really wonderful to see that you're well on your way to real solid systematic intervention, which is a really difficult piece to implement. And we should be commended for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. My second question is, what is the current enrollment in Ninth Grade Academy?
In the Ninth Grade Academy is 72, I believe.
Okay. Do we have a cap on that?
Well, we typically identify in the spring when we identify numbers, we identify somewhere in the mid-80s. And this year we identified 86. The intention being that we're shooting for a class size right around 25. In that process of identifying those 80 to 85 students, we know that there are a couple of students, despite our best efforts, who may be misidentified. It's based on a three-step process. The first being a series of test scores related to their reading ability, and then also involves the human element of talking with middle school administration and counselors to find out if there are nuances to particular students that can't be identified by those test scores. But there are students who will identify, send the letter out, and they say, well, I don't understand. My son's on the honor roll. My daughter's whatever, and we'll look back at the data and go, huh, you're right. So there are always, one or two, I should say always, but sometimes there have been one or two of those. And there are also ongoing dialogue with some parents who maybe feel that the academy isn't right for their students. Typically in those cases, we'll build their schedule so it's an easy transfer back into the academy, and that has happened a number of times where maybe a student has wanted to have the opportunity to swim without the support, so to speak. But I think the interesting piece is once, we're kind of, I would say, kind of past the hurdle of convincing large numbers of people what the academy is about in terms of being the same level of rigor and expectation. So that conversation is much easier. So I would guess that we'll see over the course of the coming years that number doesn't have to be, 10 students apart, or that we'll just be serving 85 kids because we're trying to service as many as we can in that way.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? I had a comment and one question. So my comment is, like I said to Jeff, it was just a joy to read both of these reports because of seeing the proactive strategies and thinking beyond just accountability measures that we're used to hearing about and thinking about the role that the PLCs have played. I mean, I think it's fabulous. So my question now on the flip side is going back to the accountability measures. And one of the things I was wondering about is the math grad, which isn't coming on us this year, but we're thinking to the future. Mm-hmm. And how do you see some of these strategies that you've been working on helping with that situation?
Sure. Interestingly enough, the students in the Structured Study Center identify math as one of the the areas that, and we've all heard those stories anecdotally about, I got math, I didn't get math. Math was very hard for me, math was very easy for me. So really I would give a lot of credit to math teachers who, and this year, for example, this year was the first year where we built students into courses in the math department based on how they had performed on the MCA exam. Part of that was because this is the first year we've had the score in time to actually do that. And so with that knowledge of how those students had performed on the exam in April, we were able to place them in math classes where, one, we satisfied the state requirement of remediation in a setting that makes the most sense rather than a tutorial setting where we hope we're getting at those same issues. So math teachers are looking at the strands on the MCA test and identifying where those students are needing some additional support. So I believe all but one, and it was a scheduling piece with some PSEO options. But all of the other students who were unsuccessful in the first attempt at the MCA math test were embedded into math courses. So that's one, and I would say that given that access to those grades earlier, I would imagine that evolving into a situation where we actually are building courses with those students as the enrolled students, as opposed to having courses and putting them in the courses that seem to fit, that they're actually we're differentiating, similar to what we're really doing with some of our math levels, where we have our the course name escapes me, I apologize, but we have one level of our algebra where all three sections are happening at the same hour. So those students are fluid and they can move from section to section depending on how they perform on different types of algebra. Intermediate algebra, there's the course. So intermediate algebra, the students are able to move literally on a daily basis depending on how they perform on those particular elements of that algebra course. So I would envision something like that, a little more purposeful about grouping students based on, because we can look at those strands and say, well, because number sense is an issue, it makes sense to be in course X. So that there would be, similar to what we do with ESL English, that we would have number sense math. And we'd have to obviously be a little creative based on the state requirements in terms of what students are expected to take in math. But I would envision that being probably the biggest push in terms of addressing that issue, because that's a locomotive that's coming quickly.
Well, thank you. That was a really thorough answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you very much.
Even by yourself. Carry that back to your troops.
All right, we are on to the. Are we doing the iPad Minute next, or?
That is next.
Okay. On to the iPad Minute.
And here is Mr. iPad Minute as we speak.
Good evening. The last few times it's our fourth iPad Minute segment, and yes, I will not be talking very long, much to your happiness. Our fourth iPad Minute segment this evening is going to focus on professional development. The previous three, we've talked about very specific ways that teachers are using the devices with their students. You saw some components that we had with the Show Me application. You saw the piece with Chris Holmquist and John Beatty in our art department. You saw Hope Langston talking about use with RTI at Bridgewater. Tonight I have a segment that I actually did do a little video editing because it was a 6-minute segment, and I cut it down to just one component of Tony Seidel, who is a teacher over at Greenville Park Elementary. He led Greenville Park's weekly iPad training last week, and part of it was he demonstrated Show Me, and then he shared a number of different apps that he has found helpful. I'm going to share a 1-minute segment that he did on something from Science Friday. Watch this video, it's very cool.
But if you're studying something like mimicry, I know in 3rd grade you do that. It's a great video, and it's only like a couple minutes long, so it hits it right away, and you don't have to watch it. So it's just a really short little video, and it just details these guys come across this octopus, and it talks about like how does this thing do it, and how does it camouflage itself.
The point that I really liked about that small segment from what he said is you're starting to see that transformation from where people are talking about how do I do stuff to the more pedagogical point of view of him talking about mimicry in the 3rd grade science curriculum. And if you could see, on the ocean floor that just looked like a plant, and then all of a sudden out of it popped a squid. And you think about what 3rd graders would say when that happened. Oh, that's so cool. And imagine, the point would be that now we can even differentiate when each student were to have, or at least an iPad in their hand or access to several in their room, how that can really accelerate the elementary curriculum and personalize it in a way where a student can get that concept a little bit faster. So that is our iPad Minute, about as close to a minute as we've ever had. So very good. Are there any questions I can answer?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. All right, we are ready to move on to the fiscal year 2012 audit report. And board members, you have a PowerPoint sheet that came in your table file.
All right. Good evening. I'm Craig Copenhagen. I was the partner on your audit again. So how quickly a year rolls around, I know, for is how some people are feeling anyway. And we've met with some of the board members and the finance group about a week ago in the finance committee meeting. We went through the financial statements in quite a bit of detail. I can tell you high level, we issued a clean opinion on the financial statements. So that means we believe that the numbers that are reflected there are in accordance with accounting principles. So that's good. We just have a brief handout or a PowerPoint here tonight that I'll just run through real quick to kind of give you, I guess, the 30,000-foot view of the financial statements. So if you're studying for an eye exam, the first slide here is the general fund.
It is 30,000 feet.
The general fund balance. So basically, the general fund is the main operating fund of the district. It pays the bulk of the bills. It pays the teachers. It's where all the instruction expenditures happen. A couple highlights here. On the right side is the general fund in total. General fund balance in total is almost $14.5 million. A good portion of that is restricted for specific uses. That comes through to the district from the Minnesota Department of Education. So really, what's kind of the discretionary portion of the fund balance is not $14.5 million. It's about $8.9 million. So if we flip to the next slide, if we're looking at the general fund, a couple things that we've kind of called out here from the general fund financial statements. One, the cash balance. This is a kind of a 5-year running trend. But the cash balance, the fund balance, and the state receivable balance. And some of what kind of a big thing that's been happening in the state of Minnesota the last 4 years now is that the amount of state aid revenue that's actually paid to the district in the form of cash by the end of the fiscal year has slowed down. So in about 2009 fiscal year, about 90% of that state aid revenue is paid to the district by June 30th, by the end of the fiscal year. 2010, that's about an 80-20. 2011, it's about a 70-30, so it's slowing down. 2012, it's about a 60-40 split. So at June 30, 2012, the district has received about 60% of the state aid revenue for the year. So what does that really mean? How does that ripple through? Well, what it means is kind of the lighter colored bar there. The cash balance, the cash in the bank has gone down as a result of that slowdown in payments. The offset of that, the state aid receivable, which is the red bar, that receivable balance or that IOU balance has increased. In the middle, you have fund balance, which is the dark bar. And the fund balance continues to increase. In the old days, we would say that's a good thing. Current period of time, it's still good. It's just not cash. You can't write a check for $14.5 million of fund balance. Also, about $6 million or so of that $14 million fund balance, again, is restricted for specific uses, for use in the classroom. We flip to the next slide. This is just kind of a similar recap, but really comparing the cash balance to the receivable balance and the discretionary portion of fund balance. The portion that you do have some discretion of how you use it. That's about $8.9 million of fund balance. What this kind of shows you, again, the impact of this chart, especially in the 2012 column, you'll see that you have a state aid receivable of 10.2. You have a cash balance of 6.3. It really kind of illustrates how that IOU is pulling your fund balance up, but it's not cash. And kind of continuing on, the pie chart is just a pie chart of the general fund revenue. And why is that? We talked about the 90-10, the 80-20, the 70-30, the 60-40. Why is that significant? Because the state sources, the state revenues makes up the vast majority of the revenues of the district. The state revenue sources here are kind of that large section of the pie chart. So when you start slowing down from a 90-10 remittance pattern to a 60-40 remittance pattern, that has a dramatic effect on the cash balance of the district, the cash that the district has to use to keep the lights on, to pay the salaries, to meet the debt service, those types of things. So otherwise, a couple other highlights here is most of the stimulus money by the end of 2012 fiscal year has been used. It's kind of run its course. It's run its 2-year course. It's been used. So your federal sources revenue is down about $500,000 compared to a year ago. Basically getting back to kind of what normal is for federal source revenue. The property tax revenue, which is the kind of the purple area, 12.2% of total revenues. That's holding pretty steady. You've had a slight levy increase going into fiscal 2013 over the prior year. That's normal. Kind of that shaded area, or the really light colored area is what's referred to as the tax shift section. And really what that is just, 2 years ago that you wouldn't have seen that light purple section at all. It would have been shaded red for state aid revenue. So really it's just kind of illustrating that there is a portion of revenue that's being kind of shifted from state aid to early recognition of property tax. It doesn't really change the total mix of property tax and state revenue in total. It's about roughly 93% of your revenues. So those are kind of the highlights. I think just from prudent kind of fiscal management, you've been able to kind of weather that financial storm a little bit without having to resort to short-term borrowing. So that's a good thing. There are many districts who have had to do short-term borrowing. So good, prudent management of that almighty dollar. So that's really the comments that I have from the presentation. I'd take any questions or turn it back to you for
Thanks, Craig.
accepting the financial statements.
Board members, do you have questions? Ann?
I just have a statement from the meeting that we had. Stephanie and Val should be commended for their really excellent work on putting all this together for the auditors. And we were told that by you folks of what a great job that they did. And thank you very much.
Anyone else? No, but thank you. And I really appreciate I know we talked at the meeting about these graphs that really show what's happening with the shift and how it's affecting us and our ability to respond and pay bills. So hopefully we'll keep moving on the state level to not see this continue to shift. Mm-hmm. So thanks, Craig, and thank you, Stephanie and Val. Oh, no, sorry.
I want to make a comment and give credit to the leadership and to the staff of the district for the marvelous job they have, I think, done to be able to help us weather the storm, help the whole district weather the storm, and still provide outstanding education for the students. Just a remarkable job in the face of a lot of difficulty and uncertainty, and we do appreciate it.
I think it's also very important for us to recognize the community because obviously our ability to do this is driven by the fact that we saw the community step up and continue and increase the operating levy and continue the capital projects levy, which, again, facing this shortfall in terms of the actual dollars coming in from the state in a timely way, if we had not had those dollars, we would have been either in the borrowing mode or in the cutting mode. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to look very far from this district to see districts that are looking at cutting hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, which will impact staff, will impact programs, and so on. And we, again, are not in that position. And I think as we promised our community. The focus of the dollars that we have in place now is to maintain the quality programs and staffing levels that we have for as long as we possibly can. I think the one thing as we go forward, and Craig has alluded to it in terms of looking at the receivables versus the cash versus the fund balance. The one thing that we're going to need to work with our legislators going forward is as they begin, we hope, to pay back the shift, that they will need to constantly remind the community and themselves that they are simply repaying an IOU, that it will not create one additional dollar of funding for the school district, but it will actually increase that cash bar and reduce the receivable bar. So it doesn't mean that we have any new money necessarily to spend as they pay that shift back, but it will put more cash, and we will no longer be fund balance rich and cash poor, which is really where we are right now. So we'll be working with our legislators across the state to really look at hopefully a balanced response where they not only look at continuing to pay the shift back in a reasonable way, but also understanding that if we're going to work with the needs of districts, we also have to look at a strategy that allows us to increase the level of funding we have for education on a yearly basis, because the costs continue to go up each year. And without that, it actually puts us in a negative situation where only that fund balance and only that referendum has allowed us to not make cuts so far. So just a couple of important things I think to remember as we go forward. And I know that's being worked on by a number of different entities right now as we get ready for the new 2013 legislative session.
Very good. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
All right, board members, we are ready to move on to items for individual action. And the first item for individual action is to approve the fiscal year 2012 audit, which was just presented to you. Do I have a motion to approve the audit?
I move it.
Moved by Noel. Seconded by Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the audit, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. The next item on our agenda is the resolution canvassing the results of the November 6th school board elections. And we have stapled together, oh, no, we've got two different things. So the first one is the resolution canvassing the results. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Moved by Julie,
Second.
seconded by John.
And remember, it's a resolution.
It's a resolution, so we need a roll call vote.
Possum?
Aye.
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 Cornell?
Aye.
Stratton?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The second resolution, board members, that you have is the resolution authorizing issuance of certificate of election and directing the school district clerk to perform other election-related duties. Do I have a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Moved by Julie,
Second.
seconded by Ann. And once again, this is roll call.
Possum?
Aye.
Maple?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Cornell?
Aye.
Stratton?
Aye.
And Iverson?
Aye. Motion carries. All right. The next item for individual action is the proclamation, which I am going to find.
Help, I'm not.
There it is. Oh, here it is. I had it all folded and ready. Sorry.
Thanks, Ed. We're all busily looking for the proclamation. Okay.
All
A lot
right.
of papers today.
So whereas public schools are the backbone of our democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality, and whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, school gives them hope for and access to a productive future, and whereas education employees, be they custodians or teachers, bus drivers or librarians, work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism, and whereas schools are community linchpins, bringing together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common enterprise. Now, therefore, the Northfield Public Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim November 11th to 17th, 2012 as the 91st Annual Observance of America Education Week. And we already had one lovely observation of it on yesterday at the Retired Education's lunch. So I would need a motion to, the superintendent's recommendation is to approve this proclamation. Moved by Noel.
Move it.
Second. Seconded by Ann. Any discussion? And I would just like to point out that in a week we will have the staff appreciation breakfast as noted on our memorandum, which is another lovely opportunity to appreciate American Education Week. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the proclamation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Items for the consent grouping. And board members, you did have a few personnel appointments to add to the consent grouping, as well as we had student activity account transfers, a continuation school agreement. Is there anything anyone wants to pull from the consent grouping? No? Do I have a motion to approve the consent grouping?
So moved.
Moved by Julie.
Second.
Seconded by Ann. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Items for information.
Okay.
We have some enrollment reports.
And I do just want to take just a minute with these in that this is when we begin to start to see things as they are moving forward for this year. And also it's the time when we really take a look at enrollment options and see the impact of those enrollment options in terms of our overall enrollment. And remember, and Stephanie will remind us soon, that the first thing that we are doing really with building budgets for the 2013-14 year is driven by the enrollment numbers that we have, because that really drives the base funding for a school district in terms of the general fund basic formula. So I think the first thing that's important for us to take a look at is, as we take a look at the numbers that we have in comparison over the last several months, and we make that comparison between 11-12 and 12-13. And what you'll notice is that at this point we are at the highest number that we have been at so far this year, at 3,952 students. We're beginning to grow a little bit in terms of the size of the ALC, which is typical, but we also have significantly higher enrollments, especially at the middle school at 935 and at the high school at 1,261. Typically, that's somewhat atypical. If we think about the enrollment at middle school, we've been really under 900 for the last several years. 935 really is a significant bump. And as we look at the high school, typically for the high school, as you move through the first several months, you typically begin to see students dropping away. And in this situation, we're actually seeing a growth in the number of students from what we had on the first day of school. In comparison, last year, we had 1,234 to start in high school. We were down to 1,211 by November 1. This year, we started at 1,254, up to 1,261. So again, it's a good first sign in terms of looking at the overall enrollment. The other piece I think that's important for us to look at and for you to take a little time with is the enrollment options report. And this really identifies several different pieces. First of all, it identifies open enrollment and non-resident student transfers either into the Northfield School District or moving from the Northfield School District out to other public schools. And as you go down and look through that list, you're going to see Basically, a couple things on the front page. You're going to see that included in the numbers, we have several ed districts, which basically are programs that are taking students that have typically high levels of special education need and may need a highly focused program. Things like the Southern Plains Special Ed District, the Dakota County Special Ed District, etc., Intermediate District 287. What you'll also see is that there are several online programs that are drawing some students away. And while EdVisions really has nobody going, we are seeing an increase in Houston, which basically Houston is basically any students there are on an online focus, and the Minnesota Online, which appears to have taken the place of the MTCS Connections program that was in place before. And so you'll see that there are numbers there that are going out. And then probably as you look at overall in terms of all the districts, the one district that tends to be drawing more students than in the past from our district is Randolph. And we're finding there as we get initial information from folks, in many cases they're identifying the smallness of the school. And I think what they believe are the small numbers in terms of class sizes. I think the interesting thing is, however, as you look at the class size data that we have for elementary, our numbers are very, very comparable. If we look at primary, we're looking at numbers in the 19 to 22 or 23 range, and in the 23 to 26 range in the intermediate levels. So numbers there are really, I think, pretty competitive. So you look at non-resident students coming in, you see that we have added some students from Cannon Falls, and additionally some additional students from Faribault, and also a few additional students from Rosemont, Apple Valley, Egan. Overall, however, we continue to be in a positive position in terms of the fact that we have 191 students that are going out to other districts. We have 278 students coming in from other districts into us, so we're still maintaining a positive balance going there. If we look at the Northfield students going to non-public schools or the academies, actually our numbers there are basically about the same as they have been in the previous year, 235, 232, really pretty much a wash. And we're actually seeing a slight decrease in homeschool students, with a drop from 123 down to 115 homeschool students. The one other place that we're going to see some significant reduction is really choices on the part of parents to choose one of the public charter schools that's located within our district, Arcadia and Prairie Creek. And you'll see, if you look at overall number increases, probably the greatest increases of any place on the chart, with Arcadia coming up to 120 and Prairie Creek coming up to 166. Remember, Arcadia's max is about 120 kids, so it's basically indicating that almost every student going to Arcadia is a Northfield public school resident. And at Prairie Creek, the max is 180 students, and of that, about 166 are coming from Northfield. So that's the other place we're seeing numbers. So I think the thing is, as we look at the overall numbers, we're still seeing a positive fund balance. I've got the money on mine. Positive student enrollment balance in terms of students coming into our district as opposed to students going out to other public schools. We're seeing basically a fairly flat numbers in terms of non-publics and homeschool, and we're seeing some growth in terms of the numbers of students that are going to Arcadia and Prairie Creek. But our overall enrollment, even with those numbers in place, we're still seeing over 60 student increase from the previous year. So the message is there are more kids out, but there are more kids overall coming into the system, and that puts us in a good position going forward with the budget. So that's information basically about the enrollment options and also enrollment for this year.
Very good, Noel.
I have a question. Refresh my memory. What is the state aid coming in?
State
Roughly?
aid, the base formula state aid, I believe, is 54. 5224, thank you.
5224. And if I play my role as a historian, which I got to do once in a while, before there were all of these choices, these roughly 647 students would have been in Northfield. Sort of.
Probably with a significant number, obviously, of the non-publics. A number of them have been around for a long time.
I agree with you.
Homeschool basically has been growing kind of over the last decade. Really since the state made a determination that they were really going to kind of open up the opportunities for people to choose to do homeschool, and that's even become more open in this last year, where up until then we really needed reports on a yearly basis in terms of student performance. We needed to be able to see test results on a yearly basis. We kept all of that in track. Now we basically only get that data basically once per level when they move through the process. So the message really, I think, from the state is if a student chooses to be in a homeschool program and a parent chooses to homeschool them, they're pretty much putting the onus back on the parent to track that data. The charter schools, obviously, that is a new invention. Minnesota, remember, was the first state in the nation to create charter schools. And, you hear a lot of noise around the country about well, gee, if we only had charter schools, et cetera. We obviously have been there for a long time. It has not resulted in the elimination of public schools, but there are choices, and obviously for our students within our own boundaries, they have really two other choice programs that they can attend.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. All right. Board members, you have a reminder about future meetings, November 26th and December 10th, and I'd like to also remind you then, once again, the staff appreciation breakfast is next Wednesday, November 24th.
What time?
I believe that starts at 7:30? 7.
Program's 8:15.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So 7 a.m. with an 8:15
And so depending
program.
on how long you want to take to eat and converse, we'll see some people buzz in right about 8 o'clock. We'll see other people that'll come in at 7 and have coffee and maybe a couple of rounds of food.
The orchestra students will start performing, I think, at 8. And then the actual program is at 8:15. So.
Great.
Since Hannah has her mic on, can we go back to the comments Dr. Richardson had made at the beginning and tell us about book enrolling? Because that's really exciting.
Yeah, we hit the road, I think, the end of last week, and now this week we've been starting to follow a route. And our hope is that as we start to build familiarity with people again, or they build it with us, that we'll be able to add more times, because right now we're fairly limited to the availability of the driver. But we don't want that to constrict the opportunities for people, so or restrict it. So, we're working on that, but let's get it going first, and then we can start tweaking it.
So I saw it pull out of a townhouse complex on Jefferson Parkway. So it's going to...
It's going to Jefferson Square, Florella's, and Viking Terrace. Those are the first pieces. Ultimately, eventually, we would add more. But,
Wonderful. It was fun to see it on the road.
Yeah, I talked to Betsy McMenemy. She's actually dually licensed. She does early childhood, early education, and parent ed. And she was telling me today what fun it is to be on the bus, and she's been talking to some of the neighborhood managers, the apartment complex managers, and they're willing to help her by going door to door and encouraging people to attend. And our teachers are very excited about doing that. I mean, they really want this to work, so it's exciting. Yeah.
And it's a really good connection.
Yeah.
I think for kids and parents, but it's also a great connection between the city and the school district, because without our support, the city
they couldn't do it.
didn't have the resources to make it happen. And we really needed the bus to provide a mobile strategy where we could bring people in out of the weather and have them involved in activities.
One last soapbox, if I may. That's part of how we define community ed, is maximizing resources and maximizing facilities. And that's not just school, it's community, it's wherever we are. And so this is exactly the kind of work we should be doing. Great.
Well, and I was going to add, Hannah, that, we start out with the Prime Time Plus and the $19,000 for the early childhood and all the success that we've heard about in the last month. And there's been a common denominator. And I know she's on her countdown, but it's amazing the legacy that you're leaving and the leadership that you've grown in that area.
Thank you very much. I can't lay claim to the successes. Everybody. What is so unique here is the collaboration, and this is what you get when you collaborate. It's absolutely amazing. Primetime is just an incredible example. But you don't find this everywhere. So we are very, very fortunate, and the players are committed, and they're always there. So thank you. But
Thank you.
not just me, for sure.
All right. I am now looking for a movement to adjourn.
I move it.
Moved by Noel,
I'll second that one too.
seconded by Ann.
It's my job
All those
tonight.
in favor of adjourning the meeting say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned.